Okay, you're all very welcome. It's 1 p.m. and you're very welcome to the Law Society Practice Support Information Session. I'm joined today by Kate McKenna, Elizabeth Fitzgerald and Neil Butler from the Technology Committee, and we're going to be talking about Let's Talk Technology in your legal practice. So, Kate, would you like to just give us a little bit of an introduction to the Technology Committee and the type of work that you do, and then we can get stuck into the meat of the conversation.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session. The Technology Committee is made up of around, trying to think about all the people, between 10 and 15 solicitors. And we basically look at how, the use of technology within your practice, within your practice to make it more efficient. And I suppose that's the main focus of the Technology Committee. Current issues that we're looking at, cybersecurity, big one, the development of AI, which will come up during the next half an hour, I'm sure. The use of technology in court services, how we can incorporate disability inclusion within the technology we use in our practice, and also from a client-facing perspective. And then also e-voting. Technology Committee got e-voting through in 2022, and we're looking to improve and increase engagement in the next election coming up in November this year.
Okay, very good. So just to get started, just to give us a broad understanding of the types of tools that one should be using in a practice at the moment, and I did do a little bit of research just to get us started around the ABA, the American Bar Association, had recently done with small practices, and they said, well, the use of case management software was a major area that people should be adopting, and I think that's probably first step. Neil, would you have any views on the case management software and how important that is in running your practice?
Well, certainly my own experience, productivity is enhanced by it, but it's the old adage, muck in, muck out. If you don't configure it properly and spend the time to understand how it needs to be configured, then it won't lend itself to giving the best. And it's true to say, is like Microsoft Word, probably most of us only use 10 to 15% of its capacity and capability, similar in case management. But for those firms, that make the effort and set up their workflows, set up their documents, it needn't be overly complex, but do it once, use it often. That's the real mantra. That's where efficiencies are. Choosing one, there's a more constrained number in the marketplace due to mergers and takeovers and so on. It's important, and the difficulty I see in colleagues is if they don't understand what it can deliver, it's very hard for them to assess. So the key is talking to people who already have systems, what their experience has been, and as we'll see later on, invest in training.
And how important is this the association with the accounts package? Like, does it need to integrate fully, or can they run standalone, or do you have any thoughts on that?
At a legal level, it can certainly stand alone. At a risk management level, it's not the best solution that it would be standing alone, because the separateness by definition almost increases your risk. You don't have the ability to set warnings. You don't have the auto monitoring that can be set up in the background. For me, if I was looking to spec a purchase, it would have to have integrated accounts, and obviously it should meet all the regulations.
And do most of the main packages at the moment take on board the new solicitors' accounts regulations that were brought in last year?
They do after a fashion. I don't think there's a perfect solution, because again, the regs, and Elizabeth probably know a lot more than I would about this, but the regs, as I understand them, they try to avoid being overly prescriptive as to the method. They set out policies and objectives. There are different interpretations, different packages as to how that's delivered. Certainly in the Technology Committee, we've had anecdotal comments that certain of the packages would be weaker than others in those respects.
I know before, in the use of the case management software and the accounts packages that we discussed, that there's a certain level of automation that's possible in the adoption of templates etc. Like, how easy or difficult or how important is that you would engage in that?
I think it's critical because, as I said at the top, unless you input quality material, you won't get quality material out. And to configure once takes time, but to use often saves time. And that's really the essence of it. The other thing about it is that it achieves consistency of standard. If you get your template right first time, and you want to delegate the function to a less qualified or experienced person, then by guiding them to a workflow which has identified the templates, you can be assured that you're getting the best chance of getting a quality output. Now, obviously, you have to monitor how they might mess with the actual merged document. But if you don't do that, then there's not much point in investing the heavy money up front in doing the case management.
And who's the best person to customize these templates? Is it yourself, or is it best get an IT supplier or somebody who works in the office to assist you?
Well, certainly my experience in talking to a lot of colleague firms, there isn't a supplier that can do that. The risk that you have of using non-lawyers is that they don't understand the game and they're going to take them from the web, or as we might say later on, AI, and that can be good and bad. I think every one of us in practice probably have our own pet loves and hates in terms of documents. Law Society have a very good suite of core documents, and in terms of risk management, I know that indemnity providers would expect that you would be using what's approved. So that would be the first point of our source of truth, I suppose. Not all of them are ideal. Some of them are more cumbersome, and certainly the original version of Section 150 notices were horrendous in many ways, but they were a creature of the regulations and the Act. But that's a case in point. You know, you change what is approved by Law Society at your own risk. If it's approved, it's been done in a measured way. It may not be ideal. It may not set the tone that you would like to have set, but it's a good point of starting.
And there was just two tools that we discussed previously. One was the quick parts and the text expander. Does one of you want to just give us a brief overview of it? Obviously, we haven't got a huge amount of time, but just to make people aware of what they do.
I don't mind. I mean, I'm using text expander. Elizabeth, did you mention you were using it too?
You're on mute, Elizabeth.
No, Neil, go ahead on that because you're actually using it. I'm not using text expander.
Okay. Again, Microsoft Word has a thing called quick parts where you can copy and save regularly used phrases. It could be a paragraph, it could be a set of special conditions, it could be as simple as subject to contract, contract denied. How many times we type that every day? So quick parts is built into Words, and you can save that, and it creates a little gallery or a repository. That's one version of it. You go up and you click on it and it imports into the document you're using. So again, create once and use often. Text expander is different. I use it extensively. It's about $3.30 per month, which is super value. So I set up my own list. So for instance, addresses. I was just doing one before this call, and I was doing a submission to the Land Registry. I have the Talta Éireann addresses for Waterford and for Dublin and for Roscommon saved. So my one for Waterford is simply type ZPRAW. So those characters deliver the entire address into my letter. So it's a much faster way. I'm not a trained typist, so hitting those 4 characters gets me the rest of the characters. I have one for commercial planning clauses, 4 or 5 characters, and I get 2 pages of boilerplate text. Very useful, very quick, and always available because again, it's a web resource. You have to be careful when you set them up, not to give confidential information, but you wouldn't be using PPS numbers, you wouldn't be using names, you wouldn't be using, it's boilerplate, but it's very useful too.
And that's text expander, is it? And a search on Google would get you that.
Textexpander.com. Yeah.
And what about quick parts then? Is that a similar tool, or?
It's similar. It's built into Word. You all have it. Go up to the search bar on top of your screen in Word, type in quick parts, and then you'll see the training on the right hand side. And it's very useful. I prefer text expander. It's faster and more intuitive.
And so this allows you to automate tasks that you would previously have having to type loads of stuff out of things that you do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll run a quick poll then and just move into the sort of artificial intelligence. Again, if anybody would like to ask us a question, we'll take it on the chat. We're going to just run a quick poll here now on artificial intelligence. And I suppose the first question is, well, actually, let me just launch it. So really what we're trying to find out here is, are you using it in your practice? And then what AI tools are you using, which do you consider to be the best? And then are there others other tools that we might need to be aware of? But the first question there will be, what, like, to the layman, what's ChatGPT? And it's not GDP, it's GPT. There's my economist brain in me there. So do you want to take that one, Elizabeth?
Sure, Justin, maybe if you could put up that slide that I gave you on Microsoft 365 Copilot. I wouldn't recommend using ChatGPT with your client data at the moment without, having a big deep dive into the terms and conditions, etc. But something that might appeal to some law firms is using the Microsoft 365 Copilot as an add-on to your existing Microsoft subscription. Now, I went in to look at that. It's about over €30 per seat to get Microsoft Copilot add-on. I'm not sure if that depends on what my particular subscription was. It's not cheap. You wouldn't be perhaps rolling it out to everybody in your firm to begin with. You'd probably be taking it, as the purchaser yourself to have a look. But I just wanted to show you this graph because you do have to consider where the data is going, what way your data set up in your firm set up. So in that graph, we see the entire line around the edge is the Microsoft ecosystem. So on the very right of that is OpenAI. So OpenAI is a large language model which Microsoft is using an instance of to run its Copilot for its Microsoft 365 services. So Microsoft says it is not training the OpenAI model on Microsoft data. So there should be a hard line between the OpenAI data set and the Microsoft data set. But you see this big line all around the edge. There is no line unless you put it in between your firm's data and the Microsoft version of the LLM. So there's a permission here between your firm's data and the Microsoft LLM that you have to turn off if you don't want to be training the Microsoft own instance of the OpenAI model. So between that, the Copilot logo there, which is the kind of rainbow colored thing, and to the right of that is the Microsoft data set. So you are going to want to turn off the permission between Copilot and the Microsoft data set. So I'm going to assume everyone's going to do that, and I'm not going to go any further into it. And then if we looked at the left side of that screen, we have your Microsoft apps feeding the prompts into Copilot, and then that is being fed out to the bottom left of the screen, which is the Microsoft Graph. And the Microsoft Graph is containing all your emails, all your Outlook, all your calendar entries, all your OneDrive, everything is in that particular graph. So if someone, for example, says, if you haven't set this up properly, I want to create a Word document to discuss the payment of the salary and potential salary increases for people in my firm, Microsoft will go into your Microsoft Graph, pull out that data if it's in it. So if you, for example, email payroll slips or something like that, and can pull it out and put it into your Word document. Is that something that you're going to want to happen? So the permissions that you set up within your firm about who can access what you are comfortable with, people being able to put into to use to solve the answers that it sends into the prompt is going to be super important. So permissions through your firm are crucially important to make sure that people aren't seeing data that they don't want to see, or that you don't want them to see. Another thing, say if you ask to generate a particular document, do you own the copyright in all the items in your Microsoft Graph? So say you got a template in from another firm that they'd filled out, so they did the first draft. Microsoft is going to go into your graph and pull that out and perhaps use language based on that to create your first draft made from that prompt. So again, you could end up in some sort of copyright issue. So your permissions, again, are going to be very important. So I'm going to stop now, but basically permissions. You need to lock down what you are comfortable to be used by Microsoft Copilot if it is going to be operating within your graph, which is what it calls your data ecosystem.
Okay, and does this cost a lot, or like are there different levels that I can entry into ChatGPT or ChatGPT?
ChatGPT wouldn't be going into your Microsoft suite unless you could perhaps use documents and feed it with particular documents. But if you were to use Microsoft Copilot as an add-on to your 365, I just looked at that during the week and it was about €32 to add it on to my particular subscription. So I don't know if it varies depending on which subscription you're on, but that's per seat, so per person in your firm.
Elizabeth, just a comment there, if I may. On the copyright side, it's interesting to me just to see. This week I found, to address a customer concern, Microsoft is announcing our new Copilot copyright commitment. As customers ask whether they can use Microsoft Copilot services and the output they generate without worrying about copyright claims, we are providing a straightforward answer. Yes, you can. And if you are challenged on copyright grounds, we will assume responsibility for the potential legal costs involved. And Microsoft then goes on to say it does not claim any intellectual property rights in the outputs of its Copilot service. So I'm not saying you can believe them fully because there's always room for a fight, but it's interesting that they are positioning themselves enterprise-wide to be aware of where our fears might be. Whether it's robust enough, I don't know. So
Neil, I would just wonder on that, are they standing over the right side of that particular graph that I showed there, which is the OpenAI output and the Microsoft LLM, or are they standing over what you would use in your own Microsoft graph, so the data that you're feeding in yourself? And there was a case in the UK last year, the year before, where someone had I think it was a debt collection letter or something, and they had used a template from another firm, and they got fined €50,000 for using a template that came from another firm. So it's not something that hasn't come up before. So I would proceed with caution.
I think I don't know whether you guys were able to see the poll results there, but there's not a huge amount of adoption of AI currently by practitioners at the moment. So maybe like we should just pivot slightly and just move more into the Microsoft 365 and ask the question, maybe who's using Microsoft 365 at the moment, and what version are you using? I know there's different versions that have different benefits associated with it. So maybe Elizabeth, you could give us a just brief background as to what Microsoft 365 is and how it could be adopted more. And I'm sorry if I'm approaching this from a very basic level, but I think that's probably what's needed at the moment.
Okay, so I would be astounded if nobody on the call was using a Microsoft 365. So it's Word, it's Teams, PowerPoint, it's your Outlook email. And there are some lawyers, I do know some that don't use the Microsoft ecosystem, but they are few and far between, and they tend to be extremely technically competent to do all that stuff themselves. Now, some people may be on licenses which were one-off purchase years ago, and they're still able to use Word. I use an ongoing subscription, and I'm on the Mac ecosystem, so I use Apple products. So one of the reasons I chose to do a subscription-based product at the time was it was kind of underdeveloped when I first started. I've seen improvements month on month in terms of what is offered in the Office for Mac ecosystem. So it's been hugely worth having a subscription rather than a one-off license, because it does improve all the time. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. Away you go.
So because I think so many lawyers use this particular ecosystem, I think it is so worthwhile. And I know Neil and Kate probably have things to say about this, but training in these particular apps are absolutely so important. Lawyers, I myself spend all my working day in the Microsoft ecosystem. Word, Teams, Outlook, Excel, I'm using it all the time. So I think any training I do in that is hugely valuable to me. It just speeds me up all the time. I want to get into like the top 5% of power users in this particular package because I use it all the time. I think it's a really great use of my time to become good at using those tools.
And we talked before that you might want to buy a better system or an enterprise system which has more tools and resources for you to use, such as encryption and sharing documents and back office. Do you want to explain that a little bit about some of the other benefits that maybe are unseen to people who just have the basic version?
So one of the biggest reasons to move up from a standard to like maybe a business premium subscription, I haven't gone up. I'm a sole practitioner. I do have contractors who work with me from time to time, but I'm a very small operation. So business premium seems to be kind of the good point for me, and that has advanced security tools. So it's better at creating policies for filtering emails and for stopping those sort of dangerous emails from coming through, from notifying. It also prompts me to increase my security score, which is very useful, kind of trains me in how to make the whole ecosystem better. You can't get that in the standard, particularly since last year. A lot of the security tools have moved up into business premium level. So I think for a law firm, given the sensitivity of the data you're using, possibly it might be required to be going up a level to make sure you can access those higher security features. But for some people, it might be their case management software that they're using to manage a lot of their security of data. So it depends on your own personal setup.
There's one thing here that made me curious is it can assist in the back office processing. So do you want to explain that a little bit?
I'm not sure what that
okay. Poor note taking. But it doesn't really assist in the back office that we can get. Neil, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I'm not sure what you're driving at. Administration side?
Yes, I thought it could assist in regular items that you send out or process that Microsoft.
Well, I mean, the Microsoft stuff is so well configured, PowerPoint and all the rest of it. If you want to do marketing, desktop publishing is absolutely there. You know, and there are so many apps that you can add on. They've taken a leaf from Apple and its whole app store and Google Play Store, that there are a huge amount of very valuable add-on apps that you can get with your various subscriptions, some of which you pay for, some of which you don't. I mean, Kate probably has some, because you're in-house, Kate, and to that extent, you probably have a different use case than the rest of us that might answer that particular question.
Not really, none jumping to mind. In terms of back office of, you know, look, it has great like assistive tools to analyze your output from an accessibility perspective. I think like that's worth, you know, putting out there in terms of if you are putting together marketing materials, you know, checking you know, the content to make sure it's accessible to everyone that who's accessing it on your website. You know, just describing not having new numbers, but having the number in word. So if I'm describing that properly, and various other things like that. I can't think of anything else.
Is it worth buying a better system or from a security point of view? So there are additional security features in Microsoft 365 if you buy an enterprise system. Which is like, that seems like a no-brainer, but is it worth the extra money that you're going to pay?
I suppose we have OneDrive, you know, which I'm sure everybody, well, we use when we're sending files securely, and I think that's not, you know, accessible for everyone. You know, we have a very small organization, we're 15, and so if I'm sending stuff out securely to you know, our portfolio companies or our investors, we'll use OneDrive to do that, and I think that's just been fantastic. Instead of we are looking at sort of other software providers, but OneDrive has been sufficient for us for our purposes to date. I don't know if anybody
else. It's probably a fair comment, Elizabeth. You're being more policy and back office knowledgeable perhaps than I would be, but it's one thing to buy the sub, it's one thing to get it downloaded. It's another thing entirely to actually continue to administer it. Would that be a fair comment? It's very few practitioners will be able to administer at a high level.
Yeah, and I think if you aren't confident in it, like having a trusted IT service person is really important. And and I just happen to have a good sort of, I use Black Knight, and they're really helpful if ever I have a question, like super helpful. Just ring them down, and like you can actually get them on the phone, which is much better level of support than I've ever gotten from a case management software. Like so that's really important. I think it is a really good, as I said, good use. Actually, in the poll there, it was around 50, 60, 40 people having done IT training. And I just think everybody who is practicing law at the moment is going to have some sort of use of IT every single day. Like there's no more the writing by hand or the just pure dictation, or very little of it anyway. So it's really good use of your time to learn about these tools that you are using so much of your day dealing with. So
so just add to that point, Bill Holohan there has put up a note there on fireflies.ai, which is it sounds like a fancy dictation tool that it will listen to your meeting if you have it on, and it'll give you a set of notes very quickly at the end of it. So I know Zoom does that a little bit, but not particularly accurately, but it was a big move towards
that
dictation.
Is one of the things that the Microsoft Copilot is going to do as well. The Teams will do a transcription with action points and email you with it afterwards. But again, you have to be careful that you're get those permissions in correctly into, if you're going to start using Copilot. There's a lot of groundwork that needs to be done for any firm before they switch the on button on that.
So I know we're coming up to the last sort of 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to ask you 2 more poll questions. Just we're trying to gather as much data as possible. And this is sort of just an initial kind of chat around technology. But we did have some sort of just general information we wanted to sort of pass on to people about. I mean, calm down around all of this AI that's going to take over the world, etc. Did you want to talk a little bit about that, Kate, and then a little bit about the tools that you use in general counsel?
Sure. Yeah, I suppose calm down. A lot of people are talking about technology, and obviously, it's part of our role in the technology committee to look at technology and see what's, good for people running their practice. We obviously want to make the running of your practice as efficient as possible. Technology is, best place to do that to a certain extent, but shouldn't be seen as a silver bullet, as we all said. It's a mantra at this stage. The existing tools that you have, Microsoft. Your Microsoft package that you have has incredible tools, and depending on your what your license fee is, you can avail of all of the resources that are in Microsoft already, as opposed to buying something new and shiny over here. In-house, like we use Microsoft, and the biggest learner for me was that we've looked at various technology offerings and tools and SaaS tools on the market for in the venture capital space to make my life easier. Say, for example, onboarding investors, and there's various tools that offer to make this very simplified process. But the long and short of all these things is that there's never really a perfect solution, and every firm is different. It's very hard to find a kind of a good baseline offering out there that'll match the level of sort of regulatory scrutiny that you're looking for. Even just from a reputational perspective, it's a representation of your firm when you're using a third-party software tool to onboard the most incredibly important part of the venture capital ecosystem is the actual investors that create the funds. So you do not want to be jeopardizing your relationships with your LPs. So to that extent, we've looked at many things, but it always comes down to reputation. And if you can control that from a manual perspective, it's best to keep it in-house. So that's a huge learning curve for me in terms of making sure you asking all the right questions, and then coming to a very coming to the answer that actually technology isn't the solution all the time. So
and on that note, this whole idea of digital signatures, and there's a question there, is the use of DocuSign or some of the other outside of the Microsoft world? Are there any applications people think they should be using? And it's probably too deep a question given we have a minute left, but the adoption of digital signatures.
I'll just take that one for a second. So DocuSign got into a heap of trouble last week because they said they were training their AI on customer data that was uploaded into DocuSign. So Q panics because all lawyers across the world are uploading contracts into DocuSign, and then so they have quickly issued a frequently asked questions saying we're not training our models on the contracts that are uploaded, but that is not in their terms yet. So I use DocuSign. I think it's brilliant. I love e-signature. I use e-signature all the time. But I'm kind of in a little bit of a chat with them at the moment because they haven't changed their terms to make that clear. Always read the terms, always download the terms when you start using something. And I find I kind of pick little tools that are handy rather than these overarching solve everything, like what Kate said there. Like I use a timing app that just does timing. So something that does one thing really well is often a better solution. Like DocuSign, before this palaver over the training models issue, just did signatures really well. So often you'll just be picking the one thing that does the one thing you want done really well, rather than the silver bullet that does everything for you.
Very good. Listen, guys, unless there's any further questions, we're kind of out of time, and I know it was a bit of a whirlwind all over we went from various AI to case management systems and back over to Microsoft 365 and over to digital signatures. But it's been a really informative session. We've got a lot of tips and tricks out of it, and I will share all of your responses from the polls internally here with regards to what we can do more to assist you going forward. If you have any questions, you can email me j.purcell@lawsociety.ie. There's one more question there on the chat, is there? We use legal IT and find them very helpful over the years. I think that using the one thing approach is really useful, but not scalable. And it has to be rolled out across a lot of people. Too much variation, too much overhead in training and upkeep, etc. I suppose the other thing is, if you're just looking for more basic information, YouTube is a great place to go and have a look at. So, do you have any final remarks, Neil, Elizabeth, or Kate, to the group?
I think, as we said, just dive in and learn more about your software. You've already paid for it, and there are little treasures in there. There really are.
I suppose the other one is the library have a whole lot of subject matter guides, and they've just recently brought out one on artificial intelligence and other particular tools that you can use. So if you go to the library part of the website, there'll be more information there. Also, we haven't really talked about cybersecurity, but there's a huge amount of information with regards to cybersecurity on the website. And we'll send out a slide later in the week when we have the recording made. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Kate and Elizabeth and Neil for joining us. You've been good sport today. We've fired a lot of different types of questions at you, and thanks for your time. Slán.
Thanks, Dustin. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.